Well, hello there. We're back with lesson number 5 in our ongoing series of commercial property boot camp lessons. And if you tuned into the last 4, we've been through a lot of stuff. We've been through like the last couple lessons were on 4 ways to buy property with nothing down, commercial property. I actually have 14. I'm going to cover 6 or 7 here in this series. And we went through what to look for and how to pre-screen them and the easy qualifiers, advantages, disadvantages, and all of that. And we got a lot more coming up. I'm going to give you a couple more ways to buy in this series, and then the next series we're going to get into how to find these deals. In fact, I'm going to go right online live and walk you through a website where you can find all the deals you want from wherever you're at, anywhere in not only America but Canada as well. So let's get started on these lessons. Lesson number 5 in my series of nothing down techniques is if you want to buy apartments. If you want to buy apartments, the best way to buy them without using your money is to go to HUD. HUD 221D programs. There are several of them. These programs are designed for several reasons. Actually, one is designed to buy and rehab. Another one is designed to refinance after you've got it stabilized. And then I think they've got a program just for rehabbing if you already own the property. Anyway, if I were going to go buy an apartment project, in fact, let me put one up here. Here's an example of one that I went with a student to look at in Flint, Michigan one time. As you can see, it was 100% boarded up. Now when you find a project like this, and guys, they're all over America, when you find apartment projects that are boarded up, are totally vacant, or abandoned, or whatever, this is a prime target to use these HUD 221Ds on. And what that means is this: they will lend up to 90% of the after repaired value of this apartment project to buy it and rehab it. And in fact, they'll end up to 93%. I'm not going to get into it now, but there's ways that we can get some credits where we only need about a 7% down payment. Now, of course, and that's not down payment, but 7% cash into the deal. Now, of course, we're going to get that cash from an equity partner, assuming we don't want to put it up ourselves. But if you want to do one of these deals yourself and not bring in a partner, all you got to know is that if you can come up with about 7% of the total project cost in cash, that's buy and rehab, you could keep the whole thing for yourself. If not, we just bring in an equity partner to get to raise the other 7%. And by the way, there's companies that'll do that for you when you get to that stage. Now, the key is that this HUD money is up to 40-year term, 40-year term, so that makes your payments low. You combine that with today's low interest rates, and it makes it very easy for the property to cash flow, and the number's going to work out better, obviously, when you've got a less monthly payment going out. Now, that's the upside. The upside is HUD's got plenty of that money available because it puts apartments back into the mix. Now, as far as I know, apartments are the only kind of property that you can use that HUD 221D money on, but that money is strictly for that. And another thing, it is non-recourse, which means there's no personal liability on these loans, and it is it's assumable if you want to pass this debt on, which most people do. Anybody that takes the time and the trouble to go get one of these HUD 221Ds is not eager to pay it off, because with a 90% loan sitting there on the property, it's very easy to move that property on by just getting somebody to bring you the difference in cash, or you work that out any way you want, and they can take over that existing non-recourse debt. And non-recourse is pretty important to this equation. All right, let me show you another property here that I've got in Josh Caldwell, a student of mine, found in Memphis. I think I showed it to you earlier, but it's another prime prospect for this HUD 221 money. That was a 200-unit apartment complex, totally vacant. Now, the math did not work out on that project because the renovation cost combined with the purchase cost was just too much. It was more than the property was worth. But my intent was to raise the $550,000 to buy that project using private money, and then go get HUD 221 money to refinance or to rehab the property and recoup the cash that the private investor put in to buy the property, and literally borrow more than we have in the property and bring home some cash from it as soon as we could get it stabilized. And you can do that with HUD 221 money. Now, the downside is that it is HUD. It's HUD money. And whenever you're dealing with the government, it's not easy. But the upside is we're taking the pressure off. Remember, my goal was to get the property bought because it was so cheap. I mean, we were buying it for 20 some odd $100 a unit. Get it bought, take the time pressure off, then take our time getting all the contractors in place. I was going to borrow the money with no payments on it, letting it accrue interest, bring all the contractors in, getting all the bids to satisfy HUD, going through the HUD garbage. We were going to hire a HUD specialist to put the package together, present it to HUD, and then when we're all through, we'd know what we could borrow and what we couldn't borrow and the end result. Now, again, doing the math, when I teach you how to do the math going in, you'll know whether it's going to be a make or break or deal before you get all the way down the road. And as soon as I went there and discovered what the renovation costs were going to be on this, I knew that the math would not allow it to work. Come visit me for 4 days in my commercial boot camp and I'll teach you how to do that math very quickly going in. In fact, I'm going to do that math on one of these upcoming series, if I'm not mistaken for you, but we'll have more time to spend on it when I get you to class. There's so many of these kind of projects out there like that, and there's so many bank-owned properties out there like this right now that are just sitting there vacant. The cities are full of them. So if you can get it around your head how you can go buy these things at such dirt cheap prices and possibly even raise the money to go ahead and buy them and then go bring in your HUD money, it creates for a real wealth generating mechanism, I can tell you. Again, I could have put it under contract and then went and applied for the HUD money, but that's assuming that the seller would wait, and honestly you're looking at a 3 to 6 month process to get that loan done, so some will and some won't. But it's great money. It's hard to beat that HUD money. Okay, let's go to the next technique, which is take over debt subject to. Imagine that. It actually works in commercial property as well. Here before you is a property that we had under contract in Charlotte, North Carolina. This was a pretty good sizable property right here. In fact, I think this thing had 10 office buildings on it and a parking garage. Parking garage is located in the upper right-hand corner. You can't probably see it on this map, but it's there, and these are nice looking buildings. In fact, the buildings did need some work, but this property, let me see if I can look at my notes here. This property had a 45% vacancy factor in it. That means only 65 or 55% of the project was rented. And the reason we discovered it was not the property, it was the management. This thing had one little old teeny weeny manager's office sitting in a corner of the property. It had one little old teeny weeny sign out on the road, and the owners lived about 1,000 miles away, and they had this temporary part-time property manager on site trying to fill this project with 10 buildings in it. And that's why, my friend, it was 45% vacancy. It was not the property, it was the management. And make note of that, because many times the management is why we buy the property. The property needed only a little bit of work, the management needed a complete turnaround. So look at the numbers on your screen. That's what made this so attractive to us. There was a $12.5 million debt on this property. Problem was that the income was not big enough to pay the outgo, and therefore the owners were in trouble with the lender. And the lender was willing to work to try to work themselves out of this. They really did not want to foreclose on it. So to make a long story short, we got on the phone and we worked out a deal with the lender that if they would let us take over the debt subject to, which means non-recourse, we just take over the debt, we don't assume it, and give us 18 months to start making payments on it, and let us take the cash flow coming in from the property and put it back into the property and put some management in place to get it filled, that in 18 months we'd start making those payments, and then they could take the arrearage and add it to the debt. And they were willing to do that. We had them right up to the point to where we were about to sign an agreement. And then darn if that bank didn't get bought out and kill the whole deal. I mean, 6 months we worked on this thing, and the reason that we wanted it so bad is because we knew by applying the simple math that I'm going to teach you on an upcoming lesson, that if we took over that debt and turned that property around, or stabilized it as they called it, that it would be worth at least $20 million. So we'd get a property for $12.5 million debt owed on it. Now, we'd had to come up with about $300,000 worth of closing costs, but I had a potential partner that would even do that. And we'd had to do the work, we'd had to take the cash flow, fix the property up, put management in place, and it would have taken every bit of 18 months. But to take a free property with that much equity in it and turn it from a $12.5 million purchase to a $20 million property value in 18 months would have been a home run. And obviously, it had us excited for quite a while, and it really took the air out of our bubble when the bank pulled the trigger on us at the last minute. Well, and by the way, that property wound up going through foreclosure, and I never did figure out what they did with it after that. So anyway, that's a good example though of commercial properties. They're out there, and there's plenty of them still out there. And if there's a management issue, you can take them over subject to. However, if there's a renovation issue that requires a lot of cash, that's going to be a totally different animal, because raising the cash is not if I'm just taking over debt subject to, I've got no way to raise the cash other than to bring in equity partners on it, which is another option if there's enough equity in it. But that one would have worked out well without having to raise any cash, because the property was producing the cash to fix the property. I hope you got that. It already had 55% tenants in it. Okay, now that's 6 techniques so far. Let me throw in number 7. Only promised you 6, but let me give you number 7. This one is called Buy from the FSBO owner with little or no down and no payment for a short term. In other words, I'm going to ask the seller to sell me the property long enough to fix the apparent problem so that I can refinance it and sell it and get them paid off. Actually, I've been very successful in doing this whenever a property owner knows there's a problem with the property that needs fixed, and it's not likely somebody's going to come in and just throw a bunch of cash at them and not ask them to participate in the process of fixing it. Now, I don't have a picture of this, but I can give you an easy example of this on a restaurant building that I made an offer on here recently. While I was out looking, I was looking for a place to locate a restaurant here this past year, and I finally found one that I'd been working on the year prior, but in the process I screened out about 15 different locations here in Jacksonville, and I was looking at bank-owned properties with restaurants sitting there vacant, and there's a bunch of them around. And then I was looking at restaurants where people had just moved out, and I was going to go in and take over that lease and put my own concept in there, and couldn't find anything that suited me on location or what I needed to do for that. So I wound up getting a building down the street that I did agree to renovate with the seller's participation in the cost of it. However, along the way, I ran across one building that they were asking. It was a closed up Roadhouse Grill. If you know what a Roadhouse Grill is, it's kind of a, I don't know how to describe it, kind of a Cracker Barrel flavor. And it was closed. The building was in poor condition. This restaurant had been closed for 3 years. It was an area of town that I was willing to open a restaurant in. And the bank was asking, what had happened was that an individual had bought this property from a bank trying to turn around and make a profit on it, only to realize that the property was in such poor condition that nobody wanted to buy it as is, because they wouldn't pay his $750,000 asking price and then spend a bunch of money on a building to renovate it, because his asking price was too high. Now, I know that the guy only paid $350 for the building, and but he was asking $750 for it as is, and he knew he wasn't going to get it sold after sitting on the market a couple of years. So anyway, I went in with an offer. Here's my offer, very simple. It's up on your board. I offered $450,000, which I knew was giving him a $100,000 profit, but I said I'll buy it with owner financing, with no down payment, at 3% interest accruing, and give you a 3-year balloon. And he was looked very close at that offer, and frankly, he was about to accept it when I found this other building and just told him I wasn't interested anymore. In fact, after going back and looking at this, maybe I ought to go back and find out if it's still there. But I didn't follow through with it myself. But here was my intent. If I'd have got him to sell that to me with nothing down, or even a small down payment if he'd asked for it, or maybe I could have traded him something in lieu of a down payment, which are all of these techniques that we're going to discuss in my live event. So there's all kinds of ways to satisfy sellers' down payment needs besides writing a check. Maybe I could have given him a note on another property that I had, just to know he knows that I got skin in the game. Anything that would have taken. I knew that I had all those options, but I started with nothing down and a very simple offer. What I was going to do, very simply, I was going to put it right back on the market, but do an aggressive campaign to let somebody move into it and let them build it out. And I knew that if they built it out, first I'd probably give them a tremendous low lease price, maybe even no rent for a year or two. Let them build it out, like I've agreed to do with this other building that I finally wound up in. at their cost. And I knew that if they built it up and got a restaurant in it, that the building would be worth about $1.2 million. Just based on what I knew I could rent it for after it was stabilized, and doing a net operating income analysis that I'm coming up to in a couple of lessons from now. I knew that we had an easy $1.2 million ARV, in other words. So I knew at that time that I could go refinance it or sell it. Most likely would sell it and get whatever I could as close to the 1.2 if I could, or if I had to, I could get somebody to go refinance it for $750. If I borrowed $750, or if I brought in a partner to borrow $750 on it, I'd only have to pay off my seller $450. So I'd come out of that with $300,000 positive cash right there. That's whatever interest had accrued on it. I'd still have a building producing a good net operating income with over $500,000 worth of equity still in it, and only growing from there. And then of course I knew if that restaurant owner didn't make it, then I'd probably put a restaurant of my own in there and rent the building from myself. So anyway, I hope you got all of that, but probably didn't. But it was a very simple offer. Found a distressed seller, made him a nothing down offer, give me time to turn it around, and in this case I never intended to rebuild that place. I was not going to do that. I was just going to look for a tenant buyer that I could put in there, be flexible with them, help them work it out to build out their own restaurant, and be more creative than the previous seller was. First of all, he was a jerk. Second of all, he had no creative bone in his body, and frankly, it was all I could do to just get him talk about thinking about short-term seller financing. But it was the short-term seller financing that got him interested, with a 3-year balloon, not some long-term deal where he couldn't see how he was going to get paid. So guys, it's all about structuring here. That's what it's all about. You look at the project, you figure out how you can get in it without putting yourself in a position to where you got to come out of pocket and feed it. You figure out how you're going to fund it based on that, and we're coming up with those lessons as well, and certainly we're going to cover it in the live training when we get to it. And when you get past that hurdle, now you can take any property with a problem and present solutions to the sellers, and quite often they're very, very, very amenable to whatever you want to talk about. And I'll tell you, you'll find commercial property sellers a whole lot more flexible sometimes than residential. Frankly, they're more educated about real estate. You don't just go out and buy commercial property without some kind of educational process in real estate. They understand the problems come along with it, and they're just so much more flexible to work with, as I've said. All right, well, that's enough for now on this lesson. Coming up next, we're going to get live on a website to locate deals. Not only am I going to show you where to go locate them, but I'm going to show you what to look for when we get on there by using some live examples of real projects right here in Jacksonville, and why I would pick them off of the website. Again, if you want the previous lessons, go to ronsgoldclub.com, get signed up and get them, because they're not going to be up there forever. We're going to leave them up for about a month, and we're going to take them down, and we're taking them down off of YouTube as fast as they go up. So get over there and do that now. And watch for my mail piece. My mail piece will be coming to you. It'll tell you about the commercial event coming up. I'll be teaching it live. And you've also got 3 audio events coming up from 3 different experts on 3 different aspects of commercial property that they're very good at, and they'll all be at the live event as well. So with that said, I'll see you on the next lesson. Stay tuned.